Greetings, leaders. Welcome to Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Development. I'm here to talk to you about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you on platforms like Spotify, Apple, and many more. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make in a podcast in one place. So listen, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.
I think that you can be a leader in every and any part of your life, regardless of where you fall in any hierarchies that you might be a part of. You can really be a leader who tries to lead more from a round table than a pyramid.
Greetings, leaders, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Development. This is Season 2, Episode 4, with my special guest, Robin Funsten. This is Leadership Dynamics with Robin Funsten. Innovative companies are led by innovative leaders. They are visionary, groundbreaking, disruptive, proactive, forward-thinking, aligned with their values, and responsible. But the question is, how did they get that way, and can the process be duplicated? Let's talk about it. Greetings, leaders, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership Is Podcast, episode 4, Season 2. With my special guest, Robin Funsten, who is a leadership and team dynamics coach. Robin's experience in coaching is in coaching leaders to develop dynamic teams who feel valued, satisfied, and supported in order to make a greater impact in their industry and the world. Robin provides coaching and consulting for leadership and team dynamics for innovative companies, individuals, and communities. Known for bringing the calm and the adventure, and I know that for a fact, Robin Funsten makes and holds the space for real and lasting transformation to occur. She specializes in leadership development, team dynamics, and facilitation of conversations that challenge paradigms and create lasting change. Welcome, Robin, to the Leadership Is Podcast.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you. And there's much more that is in your wonderful resume, but instead of, really going over that, just kind of tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. And so, I'm a leadership coach and a team dynamics coach. I am a trainer and a speaker every now and then for the right kind of event. And I do a lot of community and organization facilitation. And facilitation is a pretty wide range of what that might entail. I'm also a wife, a mother, a community activist focused on advancing collaboration and equity in our world. And in my work, I try to be a bridge for my somewhat radical advocacy work and then my more traditional clients' leadership work. And I'm getting a little better at being explicit about this being a bridge aspect, and it's still a little bit of a growth edge for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I understand. So what are you originally from, this area of North Carolina?
No, I grew up outside of the DC metro area, and I lived there until I went to college in Richmond, Virginia, and then I ended up in Brevard, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville, back in, 2006 maybe. So I've been in the area since 2006 and then in Asheville proper since 2010.
Okay, very good. Well, definitely I've been here since 2017 myself. So
Ooh, I got here first.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for leading, lighting the way for those of us that are becoming after even myself. So thank you. And so tell me something. Since this is a leadership podcast, what is your definition of leadership?
Well, I have a little bit of a long answer and we'll see where it goes from there. So leadership to me is when you are conscious of the importance of how you are intentional around the changes that you influence.
Mm.
And so the changes that you influence, the relationships that you tend, and the outcomes that you are reaching for. So you're conscious of that and you do it in alignment with your own integrity and with empathy for all that you impact. So it's when you're really invested in the positive outcomes for all the stakeholders, which includes people you work with, who you serve, who feels your impact, and the environment within where you work and that you impact. It means that you hold all of these parts of these elements in your decision making and then make decisions based on the healthiest outcomes for all involved. So no pressure. It's a lot. Um, and I also like to say that healthy doesn't always mean wealthy. So it means that you have to be aware of the healthiest outcomes. And while we know that, we need in our society, we need money to get by and to live, sometimes the healthiest impact for everyone isn't only about making money. Um,
Sure.
and just one more piece, which is that I think that you can be a leader in every and any part of your life, regardless of where you fall in any hierarchies that you might be a part of. You can really be a leader who tries to lead more from a round table than a pyramid, I think.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So I mean that makes sense. I read a book by a guy named Jacob Morgan, and it's called The Future Leader.
Hmm.
And in this book, he interviewed, I believe it was quite a few leaders from a wide variety of industries. One of the things that I drew from that book is that there are as many definitions of leadership as there are people to say it.
Yeah.
And so when I ask that question, what is your definition of leadership? It people draw from their experiences, they draw from the knowledge, and so when people give me their definition of leadership, that's their definition of leadership. But again, it works, right? Because and then there's this silver lining between all of the definitions that I've heard, and so yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So what's the drive and the meaning behind leadership and team dynamics?
Right. So I really love, and I think it's in my email footer, this quote by Octavia Butler, which is that all that you touch, you change.
Mm,
All that you change changes you, and the only lasting truth is change. And so when I think about dynamics, I really have this understanding that we're all in a change process all the time. And to be a leader in a change process is just to be aware of your impact in all of the things that are happening around you. And I think that when you become a leader, it's because you become aware of your impact about the change, not necessarily that you specifically intend to change things, because I think we all have impact and we all change things, right? But in leadership, it's when you are aware and intentional about how you guide the change that you're a part of.
mm,
um, yeah, so I think that when we think about leadership and when I work with folks, a vast majority of my work is in individual leadership development. So I work with folks around personal goals that they have to support their staff or to hold teammates accountable or work-life balance and the importance of self-care, because that's really affects how they show up in their relationships. And I work with teams and their team dynamics. So thinking about the healthy relationship dynamics, how do we build trust with each other? How do folks ask for what they need, hold boundaries about their own capacity, and give feedback about how they're working together, not just what they're doing together. And when you can really have that level of trust and feedback and mutual effective communication, then collaboration just flows. And we know that collaboration breeds creativity and innovation. And so I don't trust anyone who's 100% sure about anything, but I will say something that I am 99.9% sure about is that we can't make important and healthy change for our people and planet by ourselves.
Yeah.
So being able to do it together is really, really important. And when I talk about dynamics, I'm talking about how much things shift because there's so many people who affect the personality of the room or the culture.
Hmm. Yeah. So tell me this, Robin, and like I state, there are times that I go off script, right? So, in your work, right, what are, I guess, signs of bad team dynamics? Like what are signs of a bad team?
Oh, well, there's probably a long list of those things. And, you know, I don't want to necessarily say it's all bad all the time, right? Because 100% sure of anything, I don't trust. And what I would say is unhealthy team dynamics look like avoiding conflict because you don't know how to have a hard conversation,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Or high levels of conflict that are unresolved, and generally there's one or two folks that or departments or whatever that bear the brunt of the conflict and don't really get a say in how things go. And then unhealthy power dynamics. I find that when you are in an organization or a team and the power dynamics are unspoken, as in, one person really has the final say, but nobody wants to talk about how that person has the final say. Um, when things are implicit instead of explicit around power, I find that to be a really challenging thing to take on.
Mm. Yeah, because I find it interesting how I've read in this book, well, two of his books, Patrick Lencioni, um, the uh, the five dysfunctions of a team, and he talks about that conflict dynamic and how it's based from the lack of trust. And there's another one, Brian Tracy, and he has a book that's talked about, change your thinking, change your life. And he talks about how, conflict is a part of everything that you do. It's conflict is really, if you cannot have a healthy conflict, you will never have a healthy relationship, because conflict is necessary, to build and sustain deep relationships. And so I find it interesting how that whole thing works. And then another book I read from Patrick Lencioni, called The Motive.
Mm-hmm.
And in this book, he talks about how leaders should really question why you want to be a leader. And if you really don't know the real answer to that question, then you might want to, look at another aspect of the work, in your industry and company. And so I just wanted to tell you, thank you for expounding on that whole team dynamic, because we work in certain areas where teamwork is absolutely something that is desired, but building that team is dreaded. How do people get past that whole dreadedness of building teams?
Well, I think it's a little bit individual each time, just like you mentioned earlier. Everybody has their own definition of leadership. each individual person has their own stuff that they come to the table with that we have to navigate when we're in a team dynamic. Now, I think at the end of the day, a healthy relationship, and we can just put it as a healthy relationship, period, not just in a team. It could be in your partnership, it could be in your family, it could be in your church, it could be wherever you are. But a healthy relationship really leans on the ability to hold boundaries with each other. And so, if you're going to hold boundaries, you have to know what your boundaries are, first of all. And then you have to know how to communicate them with other folks. And you have to have built enough trust with those other folks to be able to hold those boundaries in a way it doesn't harm your relationship. You don't have to, I think sometimes folks who aren't super good at holding boundaries feel like it has to come off in a really aggressive way, when in reality, it can just be a pretty simple yes or no. And I love that what you said about conflict too, Jason. I work with the 5 dysfunctions of a team on a lot, and his pyramid, the bottom of that pyramid is trust.
Right.
So, and it goes from trust into effective conflict, into effective commitment, into holding each other accountable. And then the top of the pyramid is about getting results. And what I find is a lot of teams start with commitment and work up. So they're like, how do we get commitment from folks? How do we hold people accountable to those commitments? And then how do we get results? And they often forget that the foundation of a good team starts with building trust and being able to handle conflict. And
Yeah.
so, early in my career, I was a mediator. I was a mediator for 10 years. So it put me into a team dynamics path in a really fluid kind of way after that, because folks were calling me because they'd started that third rung up in the pyramid instead of started with the trust, and said, hey, we don't know how to handle conflict. We are struggling. And I'll be honest, sometimes people will come to me way too late. And
Wow.
it was tough, and a little bit beyond our ability to manage. I think it's John Gottman that talks about once you get past resentment into contempt for each other, it's really hard to come back from that.
Wow. Yes,
And
ma'am. Well, thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you for the work that you do.
well, it is my pleasure. I think, I don't know what's wrong with me that I love to hold space for conflict. I think it's that, conflict is a catalyst for change. And I really, really love to guide and witness and appreciate and be curious about the way that we influence change.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Well, thank you kindly for being willing to jump in the fight. There's an old saying that says, it's not the dog that's in the fight, it's the fight in the dog. And so thank you for being that courageous a broker of team and leadership dynamics, or leadership and team dynamics. So thank you. If you can, for our audience, Robin, give us 3 leadership tips.
Whew, okay. I think we've already done a little bit of it, but I'll just say the first one would be, don't shy away from hard conversations. And when you are in those hard conversations, stay curious and be able to admit any mistakes that you as a leader have made, because a leader who admits their mistakes builds trust very quickly. Second is do your own work. And what I mean by do your own work is not the what you do, right? It's the how you do it. So get in touch with your own strengths, your own motives, as you mentioned, and then lean on your strengths and your motivations, and be honest with yourself about your areas for improvement, and seek and actively solicit feedback about those areas that you struggle from the people that you work with and you lead. And then third, I'd say really understand the places where you hold power to change the systems that you're in and be intentional about how you change them. So, staying aware of your motives and who is influencing you as you seek to change those pieces. Like I said earlier, I don't think you have to be the CEO or the executive director of a company to be considered a leader. I think you could be anyone, anywhere who is a leader, and you just have to recognize where it is that you hold the power to influence change.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So don't shy away from the hard conversations. Do your own work. And it's not so much as what, but how, and understand the places where you hold power. Excellent tips for us, Robin. Do you have any closing comment, contact information, how people can solicit your services?
Sure. Yeah. I have a website. It's just robinfunsten.com. Last name Funsten, Funsten. And on my contact me page, there is a little click here button, and folks can always just have a 30-minute consult call with me. And I love having those conversations, and either I'll take it on or refer you out to other folks. I've been doing a lot of teams lately, and I love that work. And it takes up a lot of my energy and time and just brain space, to be honest. And so I am really, I have a handful right now of individual coaching clients, and I'm really, really excited to invite more one-on-one conversations. As far as closing comments go, I would just say I'm really, really grateful for the work that you're doing in this world, Jason. I think it's always fun to have a colleague that we can bounce ideas around and uplift each other's work. And really, I've really appreciated our brainstorming sessions and just the ways that we get to, push each other a little bit. So thank you for being my colleague in that.
Absolutely. And the feeling is mutual. Thank you for always being one that, I can reach out to. And thank you so much for always being you.
Well, thank you for being you too, Jason. It's really a pleasure to talk to you.
Same here. Take care.
Take care.
Are you promoting the right people into leadership positions? How do you know? How do you measure the outcomes, and are they the outcomes you're looking for? Please visit www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com. Again, www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com, and request a half-hour conversation to assess if we can address your leadership development needs. Oh, and by the way, always remember that leadership is influence and service.
You have just listened to Leadership Is Podcast Season 2, Episode 4 with my special guest, Ms. Robin Funsten, who is a leadership and team dynamics coach. Nobody likes to talk about conflict, but Robin makes it fun to dive deep into the difficult situations experienced by all organizations. Through experiential training, she demonstrates the necessary skills for effective team management using discussions, practice, and kinesthetic experience. What she gave us today were 3 leadership tips that are absolutely outstanding and can be fundamentally implemented into any leadership or organization. The first one is don't shy away from holding hard conversations. And, that deals with the conflict. And of course, you can see where she's coming from as a conflict resolution specialist. Don't shy away from the hard conversations. And you have to have those hard conversations in order to establish some type of, ground or to make some ground. Number 2 was, she said, do your own work, but it's not so much as what you do, but how you do it, right? And so she was talking about knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. And then the third leadership tip she gave us was to understand the place where you hold power. right? Understanding where your strength place is, understanding the place where you hold power, not so much as your function or your title or your position, but really the place where you hold power. So here at JM Leadership Development, our primary goal is to assist your company with identifying your hidden or next generation leaders and tailor a leadership development mindset training specifically for guiding your succession plan for your next generation leaders. If you would like to have a conversation about us doing a presentation or keynote at your next event, or about your leadership bench, including helping you develop one, please do not hesitate to reach out to us via email at info@jmleadershipdevelopment.com or give us a call at 828-333-7234, and we will respond promptly. In the meantime, please subscribe and give us a good review for this podcast on many podcast platforms, including Apple, Google, Spotify, and more, under the name Jason A. Muhammad /Leadership Is. You also may follow us on social media. Twitter is at LeadershipJM. Facebook and Instagram is JM Leadership Development. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.